Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Legion of Superheroes. The show lasted for 2 seasons, and it came out in 2006. And this show is interesting in the sense that a lot of people have actually forgotten about this series, and some people don't even know the series exists. It's almost like Warner Brothers is kind of embarrassed of this show because it's not even on streaming. It's not even on HBO Max. Now, a long time ago, it was on DC Universe. Back when they had every DC property ever made on there, but once they made the switch to HBO Max, they just completely dropped it. Now, you can actually get this on DVD. Back in the day, this was out in individual volumes and stuff. But as of 2020, you can actually buy either each individual season for around 20 bucks or so, or you can buy the complete series for about 20 bucks online. I own the second season only because I prefer the second season over that of the first. The first season is a little too uneven for me. See, this whole series is uneven for me. This series feels like it's not complete. It feels unfinished and everything, which is quite a shame because it's actually pretty good. But there's an unevenness, an unbalance to this series that just does not feel complete. Now, there was an intended third season, but I think it was like 4Kids Entertainment took its time slot or something like that, and maybe ratings as well, because like a lot of those people who probably wasn't feeling the first season didn't come back for the second. And that does tend to happen. Plus, each season is only 13 episodes. And the person who actually created this show, I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's funny how this show came about. I honestly believe DC and Warner Brothers just never wanted like a Legion of Superheroes show. That's what I feel like, because in this show, Superman is in this show. Well, technically Superboy. But then by the second season, there are two Supermen. And the second season is a heck of a lot darker than the first. The first one's more juvenile-ish in a way, you know what I'm saying? But not in a Teen Titans kind of sense. Teen Titans was out around this time. So was the Batman, the animated series. And so was Smallville. And also, so was Superman Returns, the flop that people tend to forget about and want to forget about. But, when Superman Returns was coming out, they wanted something to kind of get people more hyped for Superman. Superman was a big deal around this time. Smallville was out, Superman Return came out. And when you went to the stores like I did, like say Best Buy, you started seeing Superman merch everywhere. They even put out the Dean Cain Superman show and even the Superboy live action television series on DVD. I was shocked and amazed. I'm all like, yo, those were like 90s and 80s properties. Well, actually 90s properties. I was surprised they put those out because most people don't even think about that, So the Superman hype was huge around that time. But Superman Returns flopped. And then they just forgot about Superman until, because he was still on the CW and WB in Smallville, but they just forgot about Superman until Man of Steel came around. And that was a very long time in between, Superman Returns and Man of Steel. Now, when you look at Superboy, I'm gonna call him Superboy, all right? Because I just can't call him Superman in the first season. I'll call him that in the second season. But Superboy, His costume slightly resembles that of Brandon Routh's Superman suit in the sense that he has a very long cape. Before then, Superman always had a short cape that stopped at his knees and everything, but this was a very, very, very long cape. And it's kind of weird that Superman or Superboy was even in this series because it's supposed to be about the Legion of Superheroes. And so they kind of just crammed him in. Now, people assume that Supergirl was going to be in this, but no. The person who created this literally said that Warner Brothers did not want her in there, they wanted Superman. But here's the thing, this was originally supposed to be a Cartoon Network show, and they literally said they want Superman in here, plain and simple. But then they passed up on it, and then Kids WB took it up. Now, as you know, there is no more Kids WB. And even Kids WB say, look, we want Superman, not Supergirl. But Supergirl was supposed to appear in the third season. Now, who created this? James Tucker himself. James Tucker is well known for working on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited as a co-producer, and he also worked on Batman Beyond for like the designs and stuff like that. Now, there was another person who was a producer of this series. Her name is Linda, and I'm trying to remember. I think it's Linda Steiner. I believe that's her last name. And so, like, James, here's the thing. I like James. James is cool. He's old school comics. So the whole Legion of Superheroes are right up his alley, being around for about 40, 60 something years, right? And so he also created Batman Brave and the Bold. And that series went on for about 5 seasons, I think. And he also took over from Bruce Timm in the DC animated movies when they went the whole New 52 route, which I was very shocked and surprised because James Tucker is so old school. I didn't think he would like that New 52 stuff. But then those New 52 movies just did not do well. And then all of a sudden, they had the designs of the New 52, but they had the old classic storytelling of the classic comics. So I makes you wonder, was that like him doing that or not? And of course that ended and went into the Tomorrowverse, and I don't know who took over then. And now we don't know what the heck is going on. But Batman Nightfall is supposed to be the newest movie that's supposed to come out. So hopefully they will correct the mistakes that they've been doing for the past 10 years. Now, I have a lot of respect for James Tucker. But when watching this show, like I said before, that unevenness, that unbalancedness. This was his first time taking on a solo project, and sadly, he did fumble and everything. Because around this time, you had Justice League Unlimited, Teen Titans. Young Justice was not a thing at this time. And so teen superheroes are really cool. And that's what the Legion of Superheroes are, right? And so you would assume after working on Justice League, he would have formatted his show a heck of a lot better. But he didn't. And this is where the unevenness and the unbalancedness comes into play. First things first. Superboy could not be called Superboy because there were legal actions taken against the name and the character in the comics. So for the longest time, Superboy could just never appear in anything. And if he did, like this series, he had to be called Superman, which was so dumb and stupid. But that's just how it is, Mom, with those big corporation people and artists and stuff like that. So I'm gonna call him, like I said before, Superboy. So you assume, because Superboy is in this show, and the Superman movie just came out, and a few years ago we had Superman the animated series, and Superman was featured in the Justice League series, and he was appearing in animated movies. You assume that this show was gonna focus on him, right? No. He's just there. Like, the thing is, the Legion recruits him many centuries ago when he was just a teenager. He hasn't even become Superboy or Superman yet. He's just like Smallville. He's just a teenager and stuff. He hasn't even built the fortress yet. And so, like, he doesn't know anything about his destiny and his future and stuff. But they recruited him because the Fatal Five was just too much for them and they needed help, right? And so you think this movie, not movie, but this television show, you think the course of the television show is going to be him training to be who he's destined to be. Him training to be Superman, him learning about being Superman, him facing all kind of obstacles and stuff like that. It does for a smidgen, and that's about it. There's only like really one episode in the first season that's dedicated to him not knowing stuff and learning things about magic and kryptonite and one of his future villains that's in the Phantom Zone, and we get the Phantom Zone and everything. And him going to like a Superman museum and being like, amazed by what he sees. And he can't believe this scrawny kid's gonna grow to be this big muscular dude and a beacon of hope for like everybody. But it's only really in one episode. Well, one and a half, the pilot and also another episode. And then that's just about it. The rest of the series actually just focuses on the Legion. And so you feel kind of robbed because you assume it's going to be about Superman or Superboy, and it's really not. Like, after like the initial like first episode and that one episode where he's learning about kryptonite and magic and all this other crap, after that, he's just beating up bad guys like it's nothing, with no training, no nothing. He's that inspirational type person. He's that nice, jolly person. Like, he's just it automatically. We never got to see that growth. And so that really sucks and everything. And when it comes, like, they even gave him his own Lex Luthor. There's, I think her name is Alex Luthor, or something like that. She's a female with red hair, and she's a descendant of like, Lex Luthor. And she's just a rich girl who's spoiled rotten, who likes Superman. So with all her wealth, she starts staging like criminal acts so he can go and save the day and stuff like that and rescue her and stuff. But then she legit comes a villain at the end of the series or the end of that episode. And then she vows to get revenge on Superman. She even goes bald-headed at one time. But then that's all we see of her. She doesn't appear for the rest of that first season, and she only has a non-speaking cameo in the second. What was the point in even introducing her if they weren't going to use her? And in fact, some of these villains in the first season are made up villains and stuff, kind of like Teen Titans. So that person who's trapped in the Phantom Zone, he's just made up. I think that one Mr. Pisselic type character is made up as well. And that's how he learned about magic and hurting him and stuff. But then here's also the problem with the series. It's about the Legion, but there are way too many Legionnaires and stuff. There are at least 24 Legionnaires either have a speaking role or a non-speaking role, or we see them in the background, and we don't really get to know anything about them. See, I would assume after working on Justice League, like it's kind of like this. The first season is kind of like Justice League, but the second season of this show is like Justice League Unlimited, where you have like a story arc and you have more Legionnaires. So in the first season, you do have that small group of Legionnaires and stuff. Your core group, Lightning Lad, Cosmic Girl, Phantom Girl, Timberwolf, Brainiac 5, Bouncing Boy, and Triplet Girl. Later on, towards the end, they even add Feral Lad, and they actually adapt the Sun Eater comic book into the finale of the show. Basically, the Sun Eater is about to destroy like the sun and this and that. and Pharaoh Lad has to sacrifice himself in order to, save the universe and stuff. Where we see his body is hardened as like a rock and everything, or some type of mineral. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Jim Shooter, the guy who created Pharaoh Lad back in the day, wanted Pharaoh Lad to be black. But, this was back in the old days. And some guy by the name of Mort, what's his last name? I can't remember. Mort something. He was like the head, person over there at DC at the time. Weisinger, I think his name is. He said that if you do that, our readers in the South will not read our comics no more. So he was forced to make him white. And yes, stuff like that is a real thing. And so this is why woke culture and race swapping of characters that was created back in the day is necessary. Now, while everybody's, throwing their hands up in the air and talking about, oh, we're being replaced and all this other crap. And so originally, Jim said he decided to kill Pharaoh Lad off because he wanted to make him black and was not allowed. Now, Jim is not black himself. I think he's white. But then in 2011, he later said, oh no, he just decided to kill him off because, cause I think his powers is the only one who could withstand the Sun Eater. I don't believe that. I believe his initial statement of him being pissed that he couldn't make him black. So he's like, screw it, I'll just get rid of the character. And I forget, at one point, Starboy shows up. I don't know if he shows up in the first or the second season, but the Legion had a small roster in the first season, but they also had cameos from other Legionnaires and stuff, like Matter Eater Lad was later added to the show, and they even had the Substitutes, which that was probably my favorite episode. A group of people whose powers just suck so bad that they can't be Legionnaires. But then they end up saving the universe because the actual Legion couldn't, because of these weird, fluffy looking creatures and stuff that will get bigger and all this other crap. And there was some villain. I think he had fingers on his he had eyeballs on his fingers or something like that. And he does something, I forget what. But that was a pretty cool episode and stuff. I really enjoyed that episode. But here's the thing about the Legion, right? Even though you have a small roster and the show is technically about them and not Superboy, you still don't really get to know all the members because they're so huge and everything. There's too many of them. And even the small group we have, we barely get to know them. We get to know the guys a heck of a lot more than the girls. It's bizarre. In the first season, there are 3 girls on the team. Well, technically 5, because one can have triplets and stuff. But then by the second season, 2 more girls are added. One is shown a little bit more, Shrieking Violet or whatever her name is. But I've noticed something. James doesn't really focus on none of the female characters. They are the least developed in the entire series. They really don't even get their own solo episode. Like in 2 seasons, I don't know nothing, and I mean nothing, that much about Triplet Girl, Saturn Girl, or Phantom Girl. The only thing I know is just the small gist that they tell you. Like Phantom Girl mom works in the Senate, and her mom wants her to be this and that, and she just feels pressured. Phantom Girl literally only appears probably in 2 episodes in the second season and only has 1 line of dialogue. When I say she gets little development, I mean little development. Triplet Girl is a triplet, but when I say she gets little screen time, boy, I'm not even joking. She gets little screen time. She gets a little, most of the time in fights, she's just on the ship piloting the ship and doing other stuff and scanning stuff, and that's literally it. You never really see her fight. In the second season, you get a little bit more from her because she loses one of her triplets and she has to become damsel dual, no, dual damsel or something like that. And she even changes her costume to a cooler looking costume. And you get to hear her talking about how, like, she's sad about that and this and that. But it's not as big as you would expect. It's not as dramatic as you would expect. And she still barely does anything in the second season to where she disappears for most of the season. But then there's Saturn Girl, one of the original Legionnaires, along with Lightning Lad and Cosmic Boy. My God, what they do to her is just criminal. She barely does anything in the first season. Yeah, she does her telepathy, this and that, but that's about it. She gets no solo episode. Then in the second season, she's taken out in the first episode and doesn't appear towards the end when she wakes up. And when she wakes up, like, Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad are arguing like always and stuff over her. And so you think you're going to get a solo episode out of her about that, but it's really just about those three, and she's just there tagging along as they form, like, the Legion and stuff. Seriously, man, seriously. Like, I don't know if he has a problem with female superheroes or what, but it's criminal how they're underutilized in this series, especially Triplet Girl in the second season, because you think she would have this big dramatic like story arc about how she lost her triplet and how life is difficult and this and that. Only a tiny bit, but then after that it's completely dropped. Shrinking Violet is in like the second season, but all we know, she can shrink and that's it. And she has a golf thing, like she's golf, that's about it. Like she's golf. And, and she might have a crush on Brainiac 5. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe. Now, there is a solo episode with Dream Girl, and I think they changed her origin a little bit, how she used to be like a criminal and this and that. That's the closest you'll ever get to a solo female episode. And she's still barely in that episode because she's mostly dreaming or taken captive in that episode. But the guys are the ones who mainly get their solo episodes. They get about, 1 or 2 episodes per season, but for the most part, 1. But it's Lightning Lad who probably gets, Lightning Lad and probably Brainiac 5 who gets the most like development, especially Lightning Lad and stuff. Of course, Karate Kid shows up and he gets his solo episode, which is really great and everything. And then there is Chameleon Boy. He's prominent in the second season. He gets a couple of solo episodes and stuff. But we never find out why his dad looks human. They never explain that. We know he's rich and everything, but that's about it. And his solo episodes are actually pretty cool. Like, there's one where he's trying to help out Timberwolf, and then there's another one where like he's pretending to be a bad guy to infiltrate the other bad guys. And it turns out that, the bad guy's memory just took over his mind and he thinks he's bad and like this and that. But they never explain why his dad looks human, which it seems like James Tucker just expects people to know some of this stuff. But like for somebody like me, I don't know nothing about the Legion. So this was my introduction into them, other than that one Justice League Unlimited episode and that one like, Smallville and Superman animated series. And so, like, it turns out his dad just took a human form, but some chemical splashed on him, and he's been stuck in human form ever since. They could have said that real fast. But mostly he's just like the Joker of the group. A little bit like Beast Boy, but not dumb. Bouncing Boy, I don't know, he's just a nice guy with a kind of like a country type accent. I love his design. He takes over as leader in like the second season, but he doesn't really get much to do, and we don't really know nothing about him. Like, all of these people are aliens, but we really don't know what like planet they even come from or how he's able to bounce the way he is. Now there was a solo episode in the first season where it's like a fear Halloween type episode, and then in the second one there's one where he tries to take on a leadership role but he's having a hard time doing it. But for the most part, he is the leader, and I would say he's a cool leader. But the problem is, I don't know much about him. I would have preferred Lightning Lad to be a leader, but Lightning Lad is very hot-headed. Now, this is the white version. Somewhere in the comments, they turned him black. I'm not sure how he turned black. But they follow the storyline. Like, he gets the most development and the most, like, depth out of all. He must be James's favorite. He has to be. And so, like, most of his solo episodes revolve around his brother, who's his antagonistic, like, rival and everything. Then in the second season, we learned how both boys got their powers. We learn about like the sister disappearing, how she gets like restored and everything like that. His parents and everything. He is the one with the most development, and he even loses his arm. Imperial Axe blasts the arm straight off. But when he gets his robotic arm, he's not wallowing. He's just like, cool, this is awesome and everything. I'm like, dude, you just lost your arm. They had more depth and sadness in Power Rangers Cosmic Fury when Ollie lost his arm. No, not Ollie. Javier lost his arm than they did in this cartoon. I get it, it's a cartoon, it's a kid cartoon. They don't want to be that sad, but come on now. And so he's pretty much just a hothead. He's always arguing with people. He doesn't really trust too many people. He cannot stand Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Boy is barely in this show. Like, I don't know much about him other than he's the original leader and he formed a group along with the other two and he can't get along with Lightning Lad. That's about it. And then he's talking about how he's always away doing other stuff. And that's the problem. The rest of the Legion people are always off doing other stuff. Timberwolf gets some pretty good character development as well. Like in the first season, we seen him beast out and how he was created and everything. The dude who voices him is Waldo from Family Matters. That's awesome and stuff. Then in the second season, we learn a little bit more about his origin. He has the ability to kind of like go beast mode where he's bigger and looks more like a wolf than a humanoid wolf and everything. I personally like his humanoid wolf persona a whole lot better. I think him and Phantom Girl might have like a little connection, but it's not really like developed all that well. But for the most part, he's like a person who has some pretty good character development. And then there's Brainiac 5, who they kind of redid in this, where he's more technological than he is organic. He's not even organic, to tell you the truth. He's all techno based. And so he's a little kid in the first season, and he's really cool, like 12th level intellect, very smart, think he's smarter than everybody else. He's a huge fan of Superboy and everything. He doesn't want Superboy to like learn like, his future, because it could like dilute the timeline and everything. So he keeps a lot of secrets from him, like kryptonite, and he even has a batch of kryptonite that he later gets rid of and stuff. And there's so much that he just won't tell Clark. In the second season, Clark tends to get a little mad when he starts to find out more stuff. And so, like, he's just like really an arrogant kind of like kid. In the first season, it's very juvenile-ish. Like, it's almost silly. But they're episodic episodes, so there's no story arc until you get to the second season where it gets darker. In the second season, Brainiac is a lot more arrogant than what he was before. Everybody gets a redesign in their costume. They're 2 years older now. And he doesn't get along with Superman X, which is the clone of the original Superman. And so throughout that season, he's making more decisions that are more, how can I put this? Like, doesn't make people happy. Like, he's more willing to sacrifice the person or like, do whatever it takes to like save the mission and stuff like that. And like he even alters people's brains just so they can infiltrate like the bad guys and stuff. He just has no moral compass, right? But then when we get to that Kandor episode, which is titled like The Messenger, and like, the bad guys looking for that, because they do the whole Brainiac shrunk like Kandor, and Superman had no idea. because the Superman, now I can call him Superman, the second season, this Superman's only about like 2 or maybe 4 years older, and he just built the fortress, so he doesn't know much, and he doesn't know anything about brainiacs and stuff like that, and he doesn't even know that the city of Kandor has been shrunk, and he couldn't even fulfill his promise to like restore it. So those people have literally been shrunk ever since like the 31st century. And so, like, Brainiac decides to go inside himself and activate the original Brainiac to figure out how to fix everything, right? Because everybody is shrunk in the, like, city of Kandor. But this causes Brainiac to betray him. And after that, we don't see no more from the original Brainiac until the last 2 episodes. And then all of a sudden, it goes into like the original Brainiac taking over Brainiac 5's body. He is like, digitizing everybody into like his body. So you think he's killing people, but he's not. He just made them into digital copies and stuff and stored them in his data banks. But he kills the main bad guy in this series, and he nearly kills Superman, the original, to the point to where he does, but his heart just slowed down to a crawl, and he needed like a blood transfusion. And it's kind of like, wow, how he turned just like so evil in those last 2 episodes, because he's being taken over by the original program. And this is where it gets very dark, because you assume he's killing people and stuff, but he's not. And so like both Superman have to like enter his mind and help him remember the person he is. He's able to defeat the original, and then you see all his mechanical stuff just break off his body, and he's left with like an original like humanoid, like a human organic body. But he literally digitized like nearly the entire universe and planets and everything else to add it to like his programming and stuff. And so then he decides to leave the Legion. And it's crazy because I always thought of him as always being organic, but they changed it for like this show. And was when he's in his mechanical form in the first 2 seasons, he has a exomech suit that looks like a Brainiac type person, And so it gets really wild and crazy towards the very, 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 very end of like the series and stuff because of that. And you just kind of like, man, they should have saved that for the 3rd season, but of course they did not get a 3rd season. Now, originally in the 3rd season, they were going to introduce more characters. Supergirl was supposed to be introduced. Brainiac 5 had finally came back after, I think, 4-year time absence and stuff, and trying to like redeem himself. But let's get into Superman X. So the original Superman is barely shown in the 2nd season because once again the show's not even about him. But now there is Superman X, and Superman X is a clone from the 41st century. Basically, Imperiax, who's the main bad guy, he has taken over the universe and has killed so many people. So the people, like this alien race, had cloned the original Superman and made Superman X. Kryptonite is in his DNA. He can't fly on his own. He needs a jetpack. He has laser vision. He has black and green eyes. He has a mullet. He can shoot out like, what is it? Like, kind of like this green beam from his hand, and it can crystallize something and turn it into a rock. He's super strong. He's pretty fast because of his jetpack, but he lacks a lot of the powers the original had, and he's very, very, very grumpy. Now, they name him Kal-El, like K-E-L-L instead of Cal. And so he is very, very arrogant, and he goes back in time to get the Legion's help, but he hates Brainiac because he knows everything the other Brainiacs, the original one, had did and stuff. And so the Legion, they travel through time to try to help his universe, but they end up getting their butts kicked. And so when Imperiax went back into the past, this is when you see like a time beam just wipe out everything. And that's when one of the triplet girls get hit by the beam, and she's now gone. And so they traveled back to the 31st century, and you assume that Parallax had destroyed a lot of stuff, but really what he did was just release the Fatal Five. The Fatal Five was shown more in the first season, but they're pretty much non-existent in the second. And we get a couple of more villains and stuff like that, but that's about it. And so we actually kind of get the Superman you wanted in the first season. You see a inexperienced Superman, and he literally has to learn. But this one's learning to be a better person, learning to be an actual hero instead of that of a killing machine, which he's supposed to be. And so, but he does that very quickly. Like, he becomes pseudo nice very quickly, but he's still moody. But he's learning to have patience. He's learning, like, there's another dude, a bounty hunter in the future who comes back in the past in case Superman failed. And he's supposed to kill a little boy. This little boy creates like some type of organic technological medicine that helps create like Imperiax and everything. Because Imperiax is like a cybernetic humanoid type thing, right? Take out the kid, you take out Imperiax, and Imperiax will never exist. Superman X doesn't want to do that because he's grown fond of this little boy, and he thinks killing the little boy would be completely wrong, where the bounty hunter could care less. After that, we see him help out the rest of the Legionnaires, and having compassion for other heroes, even when they get framed for stuff and stuff like that. So it's really what the original Superman should have been in the first season. Now, him in the original, they're in the same season, the second season, but they don't really interact with each other, which is kind of odd. But you do have the original one trying to like talk to like the hot-headed Superman X, talking about like, oh, I have a friend that's just like you where I'm from, meaning Batman and everything. And we don't always get along too, but I learned to respect his differences. But we learn from like each other and like crap like that, right? And so Superman X does become a whole lot better person. Even to the point of hearing the original Superman is actually alive, goes to get him and gives him a blood transfusion. At the end, he goes back to his future because, of course, Brainiac just killed Imperiax and everything, which pisses him off because now he's all like, I have no meaning in everything in life. Like, my whole goal was to kill this man. That's what I was created for, and he took that from me and stuff. But he goes back to the future. But he was supposed to be in the third season, but have a reduced role and everything. Also, Feral Lad's twin brother was supposed to show up in the third season as well. So Phil Lewis voices that of Imperiax, and he's a very intimidating, very smart, like, villain. He is the primary villain of the second season, but there are other villains, like, in the second season as well, who aren't even tied to him. He pretty much is like, I don't know, it's kind of weird because like he is the main focus and he is bad and he does do bad stuff and tries to get stuff happens and stuff, but he always gets his butt kicked and his goons kicked by that of the Legion. So it's kind of like, how the heck did he take over the 41st century if a group of teenagers are constantly kicking his butt? So it doesn't make him seem all that imposing and stuff. But he is cruel and he is vicious. But then the moment they decide to tackle other supervillains that aren't tied to him, then you kind of forget about him. And then it's kind of like a couple of episodes pass and you don't see him. And this is where I'm talking about the structure of the show. Now, we do get cameo Easter eggs in this series. Like in the first season, we get like a teenage looking Lobo. You only see like his bike and like maybe an arm or a leg. So it's kind of like, how is he so slimmed down? Is it a descendant? Is it him? Like, who could it be? Booster Gold shows up in the first season as a cameo. Then in the second season, in the whole Kandor shrinking the bottle episode, you get Crypto and you get Shrieky the Super Cat and everything. Why they're in Kandor, who the heck knows? You know what I'm saying? But let me give a shout out to the intro, one of the catchiest intro theme songs I've ever heard. You cannot help but to bop or dance to like the theme song and everything. Like it has kind of that old retro, but also kind of like, how people assume that like what the future will like in the 1970s, they assumed the future was gonna look kind of like Star Trek or Lost in Space. It kind of has that old retro boppiness to like, the theme song, and you can't help but to dance to it. And it just gets like more and more and more, and you just like want to hear more of it and stuff. Like, it's a great intro, and it gets altered a little bit in the second season because they have more characters and stuff, and the tone of it shifts. But I prefer the first season intro way more than the second. But it's still a great intro, nevertheless. And also, it had a very good voice cast. Like, everybody just sounded the way they looked. That was really great. I just wish they had better storytelling in the individual characters and stuff. Except for Lightning Lad, because, he got the most development out of everybody. He got more development over the original Superman, it feels like. The structuring of the show and its characters are very, very sloppy and everything. Because it's kind of like, well, only 13 episodes, they can't do much. So you think they will have a more cohesive, like, story arc and everything. Like in the first season, just like, do the solo episodes of all the legions. If they want to be episodic, fine, be episodic. But it's kind of like even Teen Titans. They was episodic, but there was still a story arc in each season. So that's kind of how the second season of this show is. And that's what they should have did for the first. Had the Fatal Five be like the main bad guys, and individual episodes of the heroes getting to learn them a whole lot more, instead of just these wacky off the wall adventures and stuff like that which they was having in the first season. Now, like I said before, second season gets darker and it's more confined to where they can tell better stories. But then it's like, once again, they're adding in more characters. These new characters need screen time, and they're getting developed and everything. And the older ones aren't getting developed as much. So this is one of those things that I feel like James kind of fumbled in, because it's kind of like he had the reins to his own show, but he didn't quite know what to do, which is weird because he worked on Justice League. And in Justice League, it worked out a heck of a lot better. Their first two seasons, they were random episodic. They had solo episodes. You got to know who those characters were, what their powers were, what they're about, what planet or like wherever they're from and everything. You got to know that. Then comes Justice League Unlimited. You have a bigger roster, but their individual episodes actually focus more on those actual new characters they brought in. All while also having a story arc, but they had the advantage of having more episodes. So with the shorter episode count, he should have focused more on just a smaller group of heroes and a smaller like overall villain arc and stuff, which, like I said before, he did in the second, but he made the mistake of bringing in more heroes, more villains, and of course they had to be developed as well, while the originals kind of got sidelined a little bit. So the thing about Legion of Superheroes is a little bit of a messy show. And it's really sad because this is actually a good show. You know what I'm saying? It ain't perfect. It's not great. It's not Justice League. It's not Teen Titans. And it's not Young Justice. It kind of falls at the bottom of the ranks of those superhero DC animated shows, But it's still good nevertheless. I just wish there was like, a better focus and a better cohesiveness in trying to like bind all this stuff together. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.